Oh, Dr. Jones.
Not good weather for the open-toe footwear. That's my toes.
Let's open this dime bag here. It'd be fine. It's on fire down there, that's all.
Jeez, Dad.
Is it on fire?
Look at the animal crackers.
He got the shipping label.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
Pull the pin on this grenade.
Hey!
Don't you hate when it splashes you? I don't need those fittings. But I took several eighths off the bottom of this. It's really hard to tell how much water you really need in your oil.
He got them open.
Well, I'm seeing spots.
I'm eating chips.
The Monza? Where's the engine? A couple of them eights twice now. I forgot to put the seal in. I'm not just kidding you. Ralphie, stop it, okay? It's right there. So we're gonna take a total wild guess here. If you're like an amateur, this is unbelievable.
Oh, jeez. You good, cuz? Poverty junkyard stuff.
Your hair looks perfect today.
Thank you.
Does Mom let you play with lighters?
Oh, have you seen these calluses?
Right spot, actually. Oh, no. That's that good stuff. Oh, rub it on my pants. What are you doing in Crocs? Welcome back to the Sleeper Dude channel. If you like weird cars like me and you're wondering, how in the world can I take a Terminator X computer and wire it to make it work with basically any engine? Well, this is the video for you. Now, this video took us 3 months to make, and it's not because it takes that long, it's just because this was a little project we had in our spare time in between our Will It Start videos and stuff, and we had a couple back-ordered parts. It's really not as hard as you would think to do. I'll show you step by step everything we did to make this thing run, but we had a bunch of problems out of the factory computer in this car. The crank sensor is basically impossible to find, so we wanted something that we could tune easily, do whatever we want to with it, and the Terminator X was the right choice for us. But what we're doing here is taking a '89 Super Coupe Thunderbird that was factory supercharged. We're switching it over to split port heads and intake, and switching it over to a turbocharger, different cam sensors, crank sensors, coils, injectors. It's not that big a deal when you really look into it and figure out how to do it. Let's get to it. Oh, Dr. Jones! Dr. Jones! What do you got in your cart?
Parts for the Super Coupe.
Are you ready to get it driving again?
Oh, God.
We're planning on running this thing off LS coils because LS coils are what you call smart coils. So if you want to run individual coil packs for each cylinder, they have to be smart coils. So I've got some coil brackets. I got some MSD coils here. I'll put all of the part numbers in the description. A harness for the smart coils, and then we have a universal coil unplug wiring harness for this thing. The great thing about going from like a factory computer to a computer like this is when you run like a, I guess what you call like a standalone computer, you can do anything with it. So this can run literally any engine, like 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, V8. You probably run a V10, I don't know. But it'll run basically any engine. So you can take this and do whatever you want to with the fuel, whatever you want to with the spark, boosted, all motor, nitrous, supercharged, turbo. In a factory computer, you might trick a factory computer to do some things, but you usually run into a lot of problems with a factory one with, you know, error codes and going into limp mode, and with stuff like this, you don't really have those kind of problems. It's a lot easier to work with than a factory computer. So it has a built-in 1-bar map sensor, so if you're running just motor only or whatever, nitrous, you could run this. And then one of these is your power, the other one is your inputs, one's your outputs, so they're all separated from each other. So these things come with a wideband O2 sensor. They also come with a little small digital dash. You can also upgrade to a bigger digital dash. We might do that at some point. The thing about these is a lot of times when you buy a standalone computer, it doesn't come with the wideband or it doesn't come with the digital dash. So by the time you buy it, if you think about what you'd spend on all your gauges and think about what you would spend on getting your wideband and all that separate, and it already has pre-terminated harness if you have a setup that they already support. So you really can't beat it for the price of all you're getting in the package. You know, you could use the factory coils, but we kind of wanted to upgrade the coils. So we got the MSD coils here, which are pretty in red, you know. They give you more spark, you know. That's what you need. And use the brackets. I guess I'm gonna have to cut this off because they come in sets of 8. So we're gonna use 6 of the coils and cut the brackets down, I guess.
You can do it, come on.
So one of the things with this kit is, like most aftermarket ECUs, is they use GM sensors. So I went ahead and bought like a manifold air temperature sensor, oil pressure, coolant temp, stuff like that. So that we have GM sensors. We'll probably have to drill and tap some of this stuff on this engine to accept these now, so we can go ahead and do that. Big upper intake off here where we can get access to get to our coolant temp sensors. But we're gonna put in this GM sensor here. It might be the same threads, I don't know, I haven't checked.
Not good weather for the open toe footwear.
This is a 19 millimeter or 3/4. I think those are the same threads. I think that's like a direct drop in, just has different plugs basically. So real quickly, we went to the PO box and we got some fan mail. Anonymous viewer sent us this cool clock they made out of a hubcap, so that's really neat. We'll know what time it is now. Jesse sent us 2 bags of animal crackers, which I'm sure Vanya and Rocky and Granny and all of them will appreciate. And Mr. Garcia sent Ralphie his own fan mail, and he got, what do you got there? A bunch of different granola bars,
Yeah.
all different flavors. Thank you guys for sending us stuff. We appreciate it. Here, want some? There you go. That's my toast. Eat it. Yeah, like a buffalo is. Let's open this dime bag here of manifold air temp sensor. This was the same type of manifold air temperature sensor that came on like the, I think originally on like the Typhoons and Cyclones, so boosted applications had these. So we're gonna have to drill and tap a spot in our upper intake to fit this thing. I'm gonna try to take out one of these big vacuum ports and we're gonna drill it out and put the air temp sensor right in there. Well, we got it to twist, but we can't get it to pull out, so Ralphie's gonna heat it up here, see if we can get it hot enough to pull that vacuum port out of there. There we go. Perfect. What are y'all doing to your feet?
Warming them. Dad, it's like 25 degrees.
Look, I'm over here working in flip-flops, and y'all are all stacked up around the heater, even Vanya. Got your roller skates on again?
Yeah.
So we got a 3/8 MPT pot thread tap here, and we drilled out our hole. We were supposed to be like a, I don't know, 37/64 or something. We had a 9/16 drill bit, and that's what we used. It'd be fine.
What in
So
the heck?
you're making new threads is what you're making. You didn't have threads before, now you're putting threads there. All right, I think we got it all done now. You think so, Ralphie? Yeah. So now we've got all new threads in there, and this thing should thread right into it now. There we go. Now you got a GM sensor in the bottom of your Ford intake. So I believe what I'm gonna do now is tear this thing back down because it has no gaskets in it or anything. This is all mock-up. And take everything back apart, and then we're gonna get it ready to go back with final assembly with gaskets and stuff. So let's go to the time lapse. What do you got there?
It's like a cocoa.
Oh, a little
Chocolate
chocolate
thing.
bar? I didn't get any of that. I didn't want to bore you guys with it. We went ahead and razor bladed the top of the block a little bit more. I took some brake cleaner and cleaned the block a little bit. So what my plan to do is I'm going to make these solid engine mounts. So weld these motor mounts together so they can't move. You'll get a little bit more vibration, but are we worried about that really? We're not really worried about that. I'm gonna go ahead and weld this up. Hopefully that'll minimize the movement between the engine and the turbo that's over here. So hopefully we don't have exhaust brake issues.
Turbski.
Turbski, sorry, Cletus. It's on fire down there, that's all. It's all soaked to the oil.
That one little.
Okay.
Jeez, Dad.
And check out that stack of dimes I laid on that, huh? That ought to be good enough to hold that thing.
Yeah.
You and Mom both thought we were burning the shop down.
Yeah.
Mom done jerked her coat off thinking she's got to put the fire out. And it'll jar her teeth out going down the road, hopefully.
Yeah.
Is it on fire? Down underneath there too? ought to hold it, huh?
Yeah.
That ain't going nowhere. Well, we got our block surface really clean now. I cleaned out the bores. I got an 11 millimeter by 1.5 tap here that I'm gonna run through these threads real quick. Then we're gonna go ahead and put the cylinder heads on it, put the studs, and torque the cylinder heads down. So I got some Velcro multi-layer steel head gaskets. These were not expensive at all, so they're probably perfect for this. There's a part number, 26200. So if you hadn't seen the older videos, these heads are off of like a 97 F-150 4.2 liter. They have packed 1218 valve springs. They have comp retainers. They're split port heads. They have 2 intake ports. I ported the bigger of the 2 and smoothed up the smaller of the 2 just a little bit. Sand this down flat because we ain't got money for machine shops. Get on dowels. So these head studs are specific for a Super Coupe, but they're 153-4001. If you want to put some of that on there, on those washers, it just needs a light coat over them is all. So we're going to drop our washers on there with our Molly Lube. We got our tried and true torque wrench here. I'd like to know how many engines I put together with this thing over the years. And I'm going to work in 20-pound increments, so 20, 40, 60, 80. Now we're at the final step, 80 pounds. It's a little bit scary. Just same thing as the other side. It's just the opposite side, that's all. It's nice that these little cylinder heads are aluminum and very short. I ought to make him torque these head bolts. Rocky, you want to torque the head bolts?
We got the animal crackers. We got the shipping label.
Come on. Nope.
That's for Rocky.
This is a used cam that I got off eBay. It's 550 lift, 218 duration at 50 thousandths, and a 114 lobe separation angle. And this ain't your Papaw's 3/4 racing cam here. It's more like 13/16, maybe even 7/8. So we've had the hydraulic roller lifters soaking in oil. Put our dog bones on top of that. Drop our push rods down in there. So these are called dog bones, and they keep your roller lifters from rotating, because if your roller lifter rotates, then it's not good, right, Rockies?
Oh my gosh, Josh.
So this is what most people call a spider, because it has a bunch of legs, especially on a V8 engine. It has 8 legs. You know, it's spring steel, and it holds the dog legs down so they don't fall out of there.
What are you doing?
So this is your cam retaining plate. It keeps the cam from going too far either direction. You want to give this one.
This is so weird.
What are you doing?
I just developed this patented move I've never used before to get oil in the chain. How is this so complicated? It looks like there's nothing to it, but cannot get this lock to slide up on it. We're trying to catch hay on fire.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Here, give me.
Just wait until Mama sees this.
Oh, we'll learn a valuable lesson. Always do stuff when Dad's here and not when Mom's here.
You push up on these ears, it'll allow you to slide this up. That's the key to getting this reset. We got our tool here holding that in place. We're gonna get this on there, get the timing chain in it, and pull the pin on this grenade. All right, we can just get this to slide back behind that tensioner. There we go, okay. All right, see, that puts tension on it. Got our old claw hammer again. Well, everything looks good so far. You always want to turn an engine over after you put new parts in it. It's good to turn one over after every part you put in it, really, just to make sure you're good.
Hey!
So we've got to get oil sent to our turbo, and we've got to get a drain back from our turbo back to the engine. So I'm going to take this loose and see what we can do with it. What did that box do to him? That looks like it's 1/4 inch pipe thread at the block. We should be able to put almost anything in this. See, does that fit? So one thing I'm trying to figure out here is whether or not to run the harmonic balancer off the 97 F-150. I think this is 36 teeth or something like that. Or run the Super Coupe one, which is only really 3 teeth. So I'm gonna have to call Holley's technical service people and see what they think, if it would be better to run this. I'm thinking that it would be better to run this one, but I don't know about my crank sensor, if I have to run the whole timing cover and everything off the Ford, because if you look, this is the Super Coupe one, this is the Ford one. Obviously this doesn't have an oil cooler on it, but also the water pump is different, of course. Of course Ford changed the water pump. Why would they leave it the same? Guys, don't you hate when it splashes you? You know, don't you hate it when that happens? That's the worst. You think the diesel fuel is going to work a little better, Ralphie?
Yeah.
Since you're the resident cleaner-upper? Are you sure? So I think we're going to be using this Ford front timing cover because it has a more modern, what appears to be a Hall effect sensor for the crank trigger, and it has the more modern wheel, which I think you could definitely use this wheel on this cover, but it doesn't have the mounting bosses for this style of crank sensor. So we're going to have to get like the gasket for this, probably a new front seal, water pump gasket, stuff like that. There you go. That's what your oil pump looks like. That go up through here, and this is what pumps your oil in your engine. I didn't know if you'd ever seen the inside of an oil pump.
No.
That's how it works. It's pretty neat, huh?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna put this nasty thing in here, let it soak for a little bit, and we'll start scrubbing on it. I mean, you can do this after you have the intake on. It's just easier when you can see down through the top of the engine. And this does not have adjustable rocker arms, so you're just, tighten them down is all you gotta do, as long as your push rod length is right. So we got all of our rockers and push rods in. I'm gonna turn this thing over. Make sure there's nothing binding up on me. We got a package delivered to the P.O. box for Ralphie, and we're gonna open it and see what it is here. What in the world is this? Is it ramps? Is that what it is? So they're ramps to help us get in the shop better. So thank you, Jerry, for sending those. We've had a lot of comments about not having ramps for the shop, so this should help us get in the shop. Yeah. Thank you. While we're letting that sit in the parts washer, I'm gonna go ahead and put the exhaust manifolds on. So this is a 10 millimeter by 1.5 thread pitch die. We're gonna run over these threads because they're in really rough shape. Now I'm gonna go ahead and stick the exhaust manifold on now. So we're reusing the Super Coupe exhaust manifolds because they have quite a bit bigger exhaust port than the F-150 manifolds that were on it. Well, typical hot rod car, and the head studs are just barely too tall and are hitting the exhaust manifold. You can kind of start the bolts in there. I got that bolt started, but we're gonna have to do a little bit of grinding right there on the exhaust manifolds to get this to clear. I think we can use that as oil pressure fitting to go out to our turbo and our Terminator X sending unit. So I'm gonna try this guy. $8. I don't need those fittings. Those are the wrong ones. I didn't do any measuring at all on this, but I took several eighths off the bottom of this with the die grinder. So. Well, it looks like all the bolts are gonna line up, which I really wasn't able to do before. Okay, I think we're good now. We had just enough room there. I'm using NGK TR6 plugs. So we finally got our $60 intake gaskets ready to go. I was gonna reuse the old ones, but they're in such terrible shape. And the last thing you want is a bunch of water in your oil, because it's really hard to tell how much water you really need in your oil. It is kind of a really cool gasket, the way this thing's set up. It's so weird having two intake ports. And it has these little plastic tabs that push into the cylinder head, so you don't have to hold the gasket there. That's awesome too. Big moment, Ralphie, putting the intake on.
How did he do this? He got them open.
No way.
I didn't open them.
He probably got his horns under engine.
I guess this is the old EGR port. We're gonna take this off and probably weld this hole up with the MIG welder while we got it off.
Is this good enough?
I'll come over there in just a second and check it. Let me get over this first. Okay. It's starting to turn red. There we go. It always works. Here, hold this, honey. So now I'm going to try to do something I've done before with cast iron. I'm going to heat it up with this torch since it's already kind of hot anyway. I'm going to go right to MIG welding it. You don't want to heat it up or cool it down super fast. Hopefully we can weld this up in flip-flops without cracking it. Well, I'm seeing spots, so I know my helmet was working. Hey, if you can jump over it, I can weld it up. So that should be good. We've let it slowly come down from being so hot with the torch there. I'm going to go ahead and replace the front seal while we're in here this far. The gray gasket is the F-150 water pump gasket. The blue one is the Super Coupe. I don't know why Ford did that. That makes no sense to me. We have to figure out about an oil drain back for the turbo. So about the only spot we have if we put it in the timing cover is right here, which we kind of have a bracket that's going to be in our way there, or right here. So I think I'm going to drill a hole and tap it right there so we can screw a fitting like this in there, have an oil drain back. This is the only thing we have that's big enough. Check us out on other platforms at Sleeper Dude 88. Okay, there we go. We're going to go ahead and clean these valve covers up, or I should say Ralphie is going to go ahead and clean these valve covers up.
Ready?
Oh man, we're going to use 2 passenger side valve covers because the driver's side one has a big thing here with a filler neck and it hits our intake, so we'll just fill it with oil through here, I guess. Gotta clean up pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that looks a lot better. We're reusing our old gasket because it's a one-piece rubber gasket. I just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. Are you hiding?
I'm eating chips.
We're going to take the oil pump off the Super Coupe timing cover and put it on the F-150 timing cover. Well, it's got some dowels here. I hope I can just unscrew this out of here and screw the oil filter directly to... yep, I can. Looks like right there. We got a bead of silicone on the oil pan rail and the timing cover here. Why does the water pump need this many bolts? Did they think it was going to fall off? So one nice thing about this push rod is it has like a little snap ring here. If you take a 8mm or 5/16 socket, it fits in there just like it's supposed to. Put an extension on it and you can drop it straight down all the way into the oil pump right here. And now I'm spinning just the oil pump. So now we're taking the junction block for, for air hose, and we're going to try to modify it to fit the GM oil pressure sending unit. So I can thread this in here, feed my turbo, and have my GM oil pressure sending unit so I can have my oil pressure gauge. 16mm by 1.5 tap here, we're rethreading it. So I wonder if anybody else has ever done this before. Think so, Ralphie?
Probably not.
As long as it seals up, we should be good to go with that. I love that. I sure hope this fits with my bracket. I didn't even think about that. Oil comes out of there, fills this up. This goes to our Terminator X. This goes to our turbo. The other one back there is blocked off. Got our good, cheap Rule King diesel oil here. Oh, there we go. Now it's getting oil pressure. Now we're just going to pull this back out of here without dropping it and drop the real thing in. We're going to use the Ford, whatever this is, cam sensor deal. I don't know what this is. You would think it's a distributor, but it's not. It's just like basically a cam sensor. So we'll probably have to do some adjusting to this and some changes in the software to get it to accept this cam sensor. So me and Ralphie are gonna go to a junkyard locally we've really never been to before and see if we can get a GM throttle body we can adapt to this Ford intake. That Caprice wagon. Man, a 2-door Malibu. Looks like it's been wrecked in the back though. Man, it's been picked clean though, hasn't it? Look at all the engine cradles. Wow, that's crazy. Is that Monza? That's cool. Another old Malibu. I think these are Triumphs here. A couple Triumphs. Do you like going to the junkyard?
Yeah, I want to go with someone.
Okay, let's go check out some of this. Wow, look at this Cadillac. I bet those hubcaps are worth some money. Volkswagen Beetle. Mom would like that, wouldn't she?
Wawa.
Wawa would love it, yeah. You looking for the engine? See if it's got one. What? Where's the engine? I don't see it.
In the back.
Let's see if it has the engine now. Yeah, it's got an engine. Well, we weren't able to find our throttle body. Those had all been picked clean already, but we found some flex fuel GM injectors out of LS, so we got those. I love going to the old junkyards. It's so fun. Injectors, I just wanted to go ahead and test these things. Don't know if you guys can hear that thing clicking over the beeping. But all you gotta do is power and ground these things. If you hear them click, there you go. It's working fine. Always wanna put some oil on your fuel injector O-rings before you stick them down in here. These are flex fuel GM injectors, are good for between 33 to 36 pounds of fuel. Around 400 horsepower worth of fuel on gasoline. Probably at some point we're gonna decap these injectors, puts them up in the like 80 pound per hour range if you decap these. So we probably will be doing that at some point when we get to that kind of horsepower level. Are we being invaded? Pebbles and the new goat. What's the new goat's name?
Wind gust.
Wind gust. Who came up with that? Wawa came up with that name? Looks like we're gonna have to extend our fuel lines to reach over here. It doesn't look like it's gonna be that big a deal. And these injectors are a little bit shorter, it looks like, than the old Ford injectors. I think I'm gonna have to re-drill these mounting holes here to accommodate for the shorter injector. But we're just like a couple of them 8s less than a ½ inch. So we're gonna have to go about a ½ inch farther with our slots on our injector rail. What's her name?
Dolly.
Yeah, she's sweet. I'm gonna hopefully be installing this permanently now. So I'm stealing the green O-rings off of the old Ford injectors and putting them on this one. So hopefully we can get it on there now. But it looks like it's stuck behind the AC dryer. So if I can get it snuck around the other side of the AC dryer, I believe I might can stretch these out and get them over there to the intake without having to modify anything. Okay, well we got them stretched over here. Right there. We got them snapped in there. Her neck's so little, I can just fit my fingers around it. Well now, we're gonna get to the part that some of you guys have been waiting for the whole time.
I hate it.
You hate the wiring?
I hate doing this.
I don't mind wiring now. So we're gonna try to start plugging in some sensors here. Now obviously this end goes to the Terminator X computer. One's inputs and one's outputs. These are your, power supply relays for different stuff on it. Now that we have these GM sensors and injectors and stuff, which the injectors are not GM specific. There's a couple different styles. These harness you can buy. You can buy an EV1 harness, which is what the factory injectors would have been, or EV6. So it just depends on which harness you buy on what injectors will work with it. And you can get adapter plugs too. Coolant temperature sensor, which is this fella right here. Plugs in right there. And manifold air temperature sensor, which will be right there. So that should line up pretty good. I chose to go with the universal EV6 unterminated harness. So we're gonna make our own harness here for the injector since we've only got 6 cylinders. So we're gonna be not using 2 of these and we're gonna be cutting a bunch of them down because this engine's not very long. This is gonna be our longest one right here actually. So once you have your wire stripped back just a little bit, you stick it down in here. And this thing ratchets, so you can let go and it'll hold it there. It'll squeeze those terminals around that wire. And once you get all the way down, the ratchet releases and you've got your crimped wire. Then you slide your weather pack seal, put in your crimp tool, and you'll see as it crimps here, it wraps it around that weather pack seal. And then once you squeeze it hard enough, the ratchet releases. You got it. You find out what your firing order is on your engine. A is cylinder 1, it's 1, B is 2, C is 3, like that. So in the right spot, and it clicks into place.
Yeah.
And yes, twice now I forgot to put the seal in and had to end up cutting the end back off of it. So now what we're gonna do is try to consolidate our power wires. So we're gonna take the 3 power wires for the injectors on one bank and the 3 for the other bank, cut these off, put them all into one heavier gauge wire, and then the 2 power wires go to J and K on this. So we got all 3 wires from one bank into this connector here. And it really is pin JK. I'm not just kidding you.
Puns.
So there you go, there's the finished product. So now all we gotta do is plug these into the correct number cylinder. Cylinder 1, which is right here, plugs into there. Cylinder 2, and so on. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6 on this engine. Now there it is with it all installed, the main plug at the back. We're gonna wrap all this up when we get it all completely done. This is the factory harness out of the 4.2 Ford F-150. And I'm getting the cam and crank sensor plugs out of this harness since that's the sensors we're planning on using. I went all the way back to the main plug-in on this to try to figure out the wiring on this. The crank sensor only has 2 wires, and then the cam sensor has 3. So we've got our cam and crank sensor adapter part number in the description. Since this is for a GM sensor, I'm going to de-pin this and repin it for our Ford cam and crank sensors. Hopefully that'll work. What are you working on?
I'm looking for cars.
On Marketplace, looking for cars for sale?
Yeah.
So once you get that cap off, you can pull that little plastic tab back, and there it is. Ralphie, stop it, okay? I'm serious, stop it.
Oh my god! Oh my
Stop it,
god!
guys. You gotta calm down. You gotta quit playing around like this. I'm done with you. All right? I'm over it.
Slap me.
I'm not gonna put up with this.
Please don't ever do that again.
This is our Ford cam sensor. You can pull back these little plastic tabs here. Tab is just right there.
Yeah.
You pull that tab up like that right there, and then you can pull the wire out of the back of it.
Good dog. Here. Here's your wires.
Thanks. Well, unfortunately, we figured out that the GM plug pin and the Ford one, they won't snap into each other. So what I'm going to do is just do it the way I would have done it back in the day, and I'm just going to cut the wires, butt connector them. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to repin this back the way it was. I mean, this is the way I did the entire LTD wiring harness on it, and we ran that car for years, never had a single problem out of the harness. So this is a Hall effect sensor, our cam sensor, and it should have a power supply and a ground and then a signal wire back to the computer. And the other one here, the crank sensor, all it has is a ground and then a signal back to the crank because it actually produces its own alternating current without a power supply. I'm just kind of guessing here on all these wires, but I mean, you got a red and a black and a green, so I'm assuming ground, power, signal. So we're gonna hook the black to black, the red to red, and the green to purple. So on the crank sensor side, we're just gonna take the positive wire and tape it back and use these 2 wires as our ground and our signal wire for our crank sensor. So we're gonna take a total wild guess here on the crank sensor. I'm gonna say that the green wire is a signal wire since the cam was that color. So we're gonna hook the gray one up to the ground, and we're gonna hook the green one up to the purple like we did on the other one. So you don't want to melt it completely, but you want to shrink those up there. Okay, so now I think we can finally hook up our cam sensor here and our crank sensor down here. So we have 2 black wires here. One says ground to even head and one says ground to odd head. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these wires to length. And you could ground them at the front if you're like an amateur, but since we're not, we're going to ground to the back of the cylinder here where nobody can see them. So we've got some little short bolts here that were on the back of the cylinder head from the factory harness to ground it. Your power and your grounds on an EFI system are very important to get right. I'm gonna go ahead and screw in our Bosch auxin sensor here. So we're just gonna put it in the factory spot that the auxin sensor was in the back of this exhaust manifold here. We just plug in our O2 sensor plug right here. Okay, we're gonna test fit the intake back on it for the 100th time. We actually got our throttle body in the mail today, so I'm gonna see how it's gonna work out. So here's my solution on the throttle body for now. So here's the factory throttle body off this intake, and it has no idle air control stuff because that was up here, and the throttle position sensor is not the same as the one that works with this harness. So this is a throttle body off like a 1997 old Achieva, and check this out. This is unbelievable. It lines right up with the bolts. Can you believe that it's the same? And the great thing about this throttle body is it has the same throttle position sensor and idle air control functions as the LS does. Same plugins and everything. So this is going to be awesome. So here we go. We got our TPS plug-in right there. Plugs right into that. How awesome is that? We also got our idle air control valve here to plug in. Man. Also going to go ahead and make sure my manifold air temperature sensor hooks up. And we got a 3-bar map sensor here. It plugs in like that, or you can use the factory installed 1-bar map that's in the Terminator X. This is the chassis ground. So this ground is supposed to go directly to the chassis of the car, not to the battery. And it's supposed to be a really clean source. So I'm gonna put it right here. I'm gonna clean it off to bare metal and put a nice bolt in there. I cleaned both sides of this off down to bare metal so we have a really good contact surface here. And this ground is not supposed to be shared with anything else, So we have 2 red power wires on this harness. One is to power the fuel pump relay, and the other one is to power the relay for the coils. They're supposed to connect directly to the battery, which we don't have our battery in here right now, but we know it's gonna be over here. So we're gonna go ahead and put ends on these to hook them straight to the battery. I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole with the hole saw here to put all the wiring through the firewall.
Do I need to pull those? Almost. Is that all?
No, here's
Oh, jeez.
harness a little bit. Yeah.
How much? What?
So there's a single red and white wire. Pull it.
I don't see what you're talking
There's
about.
no wire I'm wiggling.
Oh.
Pull, pull, pull. It's pretty long. You can do tuning straight from the handheld, or you can do it from a laptop, either way.
You got it?
Yeah.
What's your goals for this car?
For it to do donuts and go fast.
That's it?
Yeah. Oh. Okay, that's probably good.
All right.
You good, kid?
So here's our main power and ground wires that are going to go straight to the battery up here. So we're going to cut them to length and do the same thing to them, crimp them. They actually came with their own connectors and heat shrink, which is awesome.
Yeah,
You try to get like both sides, you know. All right, we're getting to the home stretch here. So we've got our coil sub harness here. Now, if you had a factory, like, you know, say LS coil harness, it would plug right into this harness as well. But I didn't have one, so we got this sub harness here. Then we got coil brackets as well. And we've got MSD coils here that we're gonna put on this. So let's get this all figured out, get our firing order correct, and get these things put on here. And I'm gonna have to cut these brackets down and only use 6 of these. Hey, we'll have 2 spares, that'll be cool. Okay, we're not used to working with stuff this nice, huh?
No, it's more like poverty junkyard stuff.
Exactly. Your hair looks perfect today.
Thank you.
So the way this harness is set up is one of these harnesses is for the odd cylinders on the engine and the other one is for the evens. Or our firing order is different than the LS engine. I'm going to go ahead and unwrap these harnesses so we can get it in the correct firing order for this engine. On the LS engine, you have your odds on one side and your evens on the other for this harness. So that's how it's set up. Well, with this engine, it's set up different where you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you got odds and evens on either side. They're not just, for that reason, each plug is gonna have to go to each side. And so we're limited on our width here. Now I could mount them up high on the intake. That would work. It kind of looked cool, I guess, but I think what I'm really gonna do is cut these power and ground wires out and lengthen them and make them to where I can mount the coils over on each bank outside of the intake just for hood clearance and stuff like that. So basically what it boils down to here is these have a trigger wire. Each trigger wire is a different color from the other one. Then you have your red wires, which is your power, and then you have 2 black wires, which is your grounds. It has 2 separate grounds. It's not that big of a deal once you really break it down. So don't be worried about cutting this stuff. You'll be fine. What I did was I cut all the junctions out for the grounds and powers, but I left all the signal wires in place, except for I cut the signal wires for the number 7 and 8 cylinders because we don't have cylinders 7 and 8. Now, we should be able to spread this harness way out like this and just rewire our powers and grounds back together. So I got the 3 power wires from this bank, and now I'm gonna just crimp all them together, do the same thing with the grounds, and then run new power and ground wires to these. That's our last wire. So just re-hooking up all the powers and grounds, but on separate banks. Ralphie likes to do the heat shrink stuff. Does Mom let you play with lighters?
No, not really. We had a fire going and it was kind of cold outside. And well, I was putting papers in the fire so it would burn bigger. And I had a lighter in my hand. And well, I threw the lighter in and I told Dad very slowly and nervously that I hadn't thrown a lighter in the fire. So he ran and closed the door like one of the doors, so like exploded out the other one towards the TV.
Yeah, so the lighter blew up in my face. It got a little too hot for Ralphie's dishwater hands.
Why do you call them dishwater?
You wash dishes with them.
No, I've never washed dishes in my life. No, I don't. Have you seen these calluses?
I'm hooking up my plug wires now. I'm just using some old LS plug wires I had laying around here from the LTD. If you're wanting to mount the coils farther away, you can use LT1 plug wires because they have the same sort of connector here, but they're just longer. So I'm going to finally go ahead and put the harmonic balancer on there. Like we stated before, it has 35 teeth and there's one slot that's missing. That's what we're going to have to put into our Holley to make this thing run. We got our harmonic balancer install tool here. Perfect. Now I know we plugged in a 3-bar map sensor earlier, but just for ease here, I'm going to hook up this built-in 1-bar map just to get this thing, wired and fired just to make sure it's actually going to work. I like these, what I call unilug batteries, because you can run a lot of your accessories off the side and keep your top post clean. But we're going to go ahead and hook up power here so we can find a wire to run our switch power source from.
I'm trying not to cut it on the edge. How far?
She's gonna nurse your jacket.
Yeah. Oh.
So the fuel pump wire is actually not long enough to go all the way to the trunk for me. So I'm going to crimp it right here and add on a section of wire. We're going to go back to the fuel pump relay, the factory one in the trunk with this. First wire I'm putting in the right spot actually. Oh, did you fall, girl? So I found under here on the switch power wire, which is the red wire with the blue stripe, which I believe is our last essential wire we have to hook up to get this thing to fire. It needs a power source that is on when the key's on and cranking both, which is usually pretty hard to find one that has power when it's cranking. But I found the ABS fuse does, so I'm gonna hook it up to the power supply for the ABS because this car doesn't have ABS on it anymore. It's been taken off before I owned it. Okay, well, I can't believe it, but I think the time has finally come to plug this thing in. Okay, last thing we got to hook up here is our power. So I guess we're ready to turn the power on and see what happens. Okay, Ralphie, turn the key on. Let's see what happens. See if we... Oh, look how fancy that is. It's nice. So it has these indicator lights if you have an issue with a certain sensor or something. Now I've got to go ahead and hook up my turbo feed and return line because it's going to be pumping oil out of this thing unless I just blocked off the feed line. So I'm going to go ahead and just set the turbo over here with the feed and return, and that'll let it pump oil through the turbo while we're doing this. So since the Holley can directly power a fuel pump up to 15 amps, I just cut the power wire coming out of the fuel pump relay in the trunk here, and I'm going to hook up the green power wire from the Terminator X straight to this wire right here. Crank it over for like you're trying to start it. Number 7 was lit up red there when we were trying to crank it. Let me see what that means. So 7 in the red says cam error detected. So we must have some sort of issue with our cam sensor. So fast forward, I don't know, a month and a half later, here we are. We figured out that with the touchscreen, you can use it if you have like a LS or a Hemi or a Coyote or a small block Chevy or a big block Chevy. But if you have like a really weird application like this, you actually need the Holley tuning software that you can get for free on Holley's website. All you have to do is go to holley.com, click on the support tab, click on fuel injection. It has the latest software version free to download. So we got our laptop out here. We downloaded our Terminator X tuning software. And the other thing we had to wait on for so long was these USB cords were on back order. So we got our USB adapter because I should have ordered it originally and didn't realize I didn't order it. And we're going to try to fire this thing up finally. I went into Open Global File. I went into Base Calibrations. This is just a warning. And then I actually went to GM LS Based because we're running a lot of LS sensors and coils. And I actually selected the 24X MPFI LS base calibration. And then I went in and changed a bunch of stuff on it. I'll show you what that was. I'm going into system here, and you look, I changed it from, you have a drop down menu, you can decide how many cylinders you have. So we have 6 cylinders, 3.8 liters. Right here, fuel injectors, we put the 5.3 liter flex fuel injectors. If you have a different injector than that, they got Ford Mopar, everything in here. Big things we changed as well. We went to ignition parameters, and we did the drop down menu, we went to custom. In custom, you click on configure. The drop down menu had a 36-1 crank reluctor wheel, and it actually shows it to you here. We have it set up on coil unplug ignition. So hopefully I guessed at the right stuff. Let's find out. So if you click right here, it'll pull up all your gauges. So it'll show you all your stuff live while you're running the engine. So we're gonna plug this thing in for the first time here. Turn the ignition switch to on, but don't crank it, Ralphie.
There you go.
All right, so see we got our lights lighting up here. I can hear our fuel pump priming. So now we have pulled up our screen, and we are gonna send this to the ECU. Ooh, look at that, Ralphie.
Yeah.
So we got that sent over. Now turn the ignition off, Ralphie. Now cycle it back on. It's telling us we need to do a TPS auto set.
Slowly press the pedal to the floor, then slowly release the pedal.
Okay, I'm pushing it to the floor, I'm releasing. I'm pushing it to the floor, I'm releasing. So we're gonna try to spin this thing over now and see what happens with it, see if it picks up and runs or not. No, can you believe it started that quick?
That shocks me.
We guessed at all the ignition stuff. That shows how good this Holley is. We guessed at everything, and it just started up. So I had him shut it off real quick because I want to check some things. But, man, that's incredible that it will start up like that. I've used some other software versions with my other builds, and it was not that easy.
At all.
And this is like, I just guessed at all the ignition stuff. That's incredible. I didn't even work the throttle. I mean, I was not expecting it to fire up that quickly, and usually you gotta mess with the throttle and stuff to get in the fire. No, just crank that up. All right, let's try this again. I can't believe it's that easy to get going.
It's so loud.
Well, it's open manifolds right now. It has no exhaust on whatsoever. Has no cooling system, so we cannot run it long at all. But man, that is crazy. Can you believe that? That it just cranked right up. Just that easy.
I think the last time with the other computer, you spent days.
Yeah, with the other, with what I had in the LTD and the Starlet, I think I spent 2 weeks getting it to start after I got to this stage.
Yeah.
Like, this has been so easy compared to that. It just does a lot of the work for you. I'm gonna try to do a data log here with this. So you just click the little clipboard, and then that starts your data log. If the clipboard's red, you're data logging. Alright, so let's stop our data log. We're going to name that first start. This will give us an idea of what some of our sensors are doing. So we're going to go to our data log drop down menu. We're going to open a data log, and there you go. We have a data log. This is before I crank the engine. So once you select the things you want to see, you can click anywhere in here and it will give you whatever the reading was at that spot. So right here we were at 13.4 air fuel. The reason it's spiking crazy up here is because our oxygen sensor is right next to our open manifold. If it had a pipe below it, that would fix that issue. We were at 88 kPa on our manifold pressure, and we were at 1,000 RPM sitting there idle or just under it. So now that we got it to the running stage, we're gonna hook back up to the touch screen, and I'll show you what it can do. Got them old seat belts. So we're gonna click on monitor here, multi-gauge, vitals. All right, so there you go. We have 12.2 volts, which obviously our alternator's not hooked up right now. Coolant temp, sensor's reading 95 degrees. Idle air control is at 83% right now. So we are going to, it's showing stall because the RPM is, the engine's not spinning. So you man the key there, Ralphie, and we're gonna crank it up again. So there you go. You can monitor your engine just from the handheld. And like I said before, if you had a basic setup that wasn't so crazy, I mean, the fact that this will run, we're running, you know, a 97 F-150 crank and cam sensor with mismatched heads and block, and we're using LS cools and LS injectors. I mean, the fact that this thing will run that easy, first try cranked up once we loaded the base calibration, that's really incredible. That really says a lot about this system, how easy it is. I mean, doing an LS or a Hemi or a Coyote or whatever would be super easy with this because you already have the base calibration. We had to build that ourselves and guess at it. So big thank you to Holley for the help with this setup. They hooked us up on some of the parts for this thing. They helped us out with some technical advice because I'm a dummy when it comes to this stuff. If I can do it, you can do it, believe me. But obviously we got a lot more to do to this thing. We definitely got to get our cooling system hooked up, our accessories and belts and radiator, finish welding up our exhaust and wastegate. That's going to be in a future video, or this thing would have been forever long. But yeah, this thing was over 3 months in the making, not because it takes that long, but because when I started this video, I was still working my full-time job, and we were just working on this in between the wheel it starts and cleanups and first drive videos we normally do. But I'm super excited about this. We're planning to hammer down this now that it's running. It'll get me motivated to work on it more. But remember, drink your RC colas and pour one out for your homies right on your shop floor. Oh, not on my feet, bro.
Seals the cracks.
Oh, I ain't got no cracks in my feet you need to put it on.
We ain't got cracks in your floor.
But yeah, this thing should be really fun when we get it done. I'm hoping it's going to be about double the power that it had with the Supercharger now that we have the, you know, the split port heads, the bigger cam, bigger valve springs, better intake setup, turbo. Yeah, go ahead. Definitely lots of future videos to come with this car. We want to get it done. Maybe we'll go down on the drag strip with it. Or, well, I'd love to autocross it as well. If Mom has anything to do with it, she'll be wanting to drift it. She likes to drifting. You're ready, aren't you? Sorry if the video was a little bit choppy. It just took a very long time to do between me just not having time to work on it and having the back-ordered USB cable. But we got it all straightened out finally. I'm super excited about this car. It's probably our best car we own. As far as condition, it's probably the best car we own, really.
And it's fun.
It is fun. I'll put in the description the part numbers for all the stuff we got for this car so you could buy it if you want to. Has anybody else done a 3.8 Ford with a Terminator X? Let me know in the comments if you've done it. I'd love to check out your videos if you have some. Definitely need to get back on some of the other cars, but this is the oldest video we had started. I mean, over 3 months of trying to get this one done. But we got to get on the Fairmont too, because that's really going to be our drag car build. This one will probably drag race some. It's kind of a sad day here. We don't have the bourbon barbecue today. We just got the normal barbecue. Those are kind of second on the ladder for me. Are you excited about this?
Yes.
Why?
Donuts.
Donuts. You want to do donuts. That makes sense.
So Krispy Kreme
Go fast.
or Dunkin'?
Yeah, Krispy Kreme or Dunkin'.
Krispy Kreme full of life.
Do you want another one? You can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at
Sleepy Dude 88.
You can check us out on our second channel at
Sleepy Dude 2.
Super Dude 2. We'll see you guys for the next one. We really appreciate you guys watching as usual. Couldn't do it without you guys. And I mean, Rocky's got to eat his animal crackers. If you don't watch, he don't get animal crackers. Oh, is she coming in? Wingo's coming in. You want? Do you eat them? I've never tried to give them to you. Look at that. Rocky's the only goat on earth that'll eat them.
It's because he's half human.
Let's go out there and give Rocky a little treat.
Okay, let's
guys.
do.
Where's he at?
I think he's jumped the ship. Walkie!
Has he ran away from home?
Have you been in the mud? Huh?
God, where's he getting out at?
He goes through that gate over here.
Oh gosh, let's come on, we're doing the end of a video. Where you been? There you go. Here. I saved you a half of Aina, since you're the only goat in the world that eats them. Is that good stuff? I think we're out of animal crackers, aren't we?
Come here.
Here's your RC Cola. That's that good stuff. There you go. Look, she sat down for it. There you go. There you go.
That good stuff.
Was that good stuff? That good RC Cola? Look, it's empty. You don't even like RC Cola. See, look, he'll wipe it off. He don't even like. Oh, he's gonna rub it on my pants. Oh, rub it on my pants. Rub it on my pants. Yeah. So he hates it.
Come by, Rocky.
We couldn't have done it without his help, really.
You were awesome. That feel good.
She will lay there and let you rub her all day, won't she?
Yeah.
What are you doing in Crocs? No son of mine's wearing Crocs.
Well, look, I am.
What's with the socks?
You gotta have long socks with your Crocs.
We'll talk to you later, Granny. You're looking fine, girl. You're looking fine.
Nice ears.